Good evening, everyone. Sorry, it's a little bit dark. Not that you necessarily have to see my face. I'll just wait for... So basically, guys, I had to create a new live because I wasn't able to activate the live video that I had scheduled. So hopefully everyone will come from that video onto this video. So let me see. Right, so I am going to delete the other one. Sir, my life depends on you. I'll just wait for a few more people to hop on, guys. Realistically, probably start about 10 minutes. So you can chat amongst yourselves or ask some questions. But obviously there'll be plenty of time for questions at the end and indeed throughout the live. So what I'll do is I won't do an actual past paper, but I'll share my screen and I'll sort of go through the questions and give some advice and some do's and some don'ts. But I'll talk you through how to approach each question in the most effective way, I guess. So sorry, I don't have a fancy pen like the ginger mathematician. He's the ultimate goat. Thanks, Ghost. I'm so stressed for tomorrow's IGCSE. I'm sure you are going to do absolutely fine. FLE paper one, it's very easy for me to say, it's accessible to most, but it's all to do with getting through all of the content, right? Keeping an eye on the clock, making sure that you don't leave 20 minutes for question 3, which unfortunately does happen every single year. There's a lot of content to wade through, right? Ginger mathematician, you missed what I said before. I said, unfortunately, is it called a stylus? I said, I don't have a fancy pen. Just have to listen to me talk and share my screen. Hopefully I can share my screen at least. Joanne, probably an hour. I had an idea once. I was going to reach out to the ginger mathematician and I was thinking, let's do some sort of collab and I'll teach you an English question and he can teach me a maths question. But then I realized, well, the sort of reality dawned upon me that I'm absolutely hopeless at maths. So I don't think it might be an entertaining video. I invigilated the maths core exam today, and I was just haunted. Having a sort of cursory glance at some of the questions, it brought me back to my high school days and how miserable it was having to learn maths. I did get a B in the end somehow. I don't know how I got a B. But yes, well done all for finishing your maths. Everyone knows maths and English, fortunately or unfortunately, they stay with you forever. Regarding formal reports, so last year, I don't want to say like one of the few teachers. I'm sure your English teachers have covered all of the prescribed text types. But with my year 11s last year, I said, guys, this is a really dull text type. Okay. Some of you, though, in the future, you might have to, if you're working in the corporate world or whatever, you might have to craft or type up a formal report. It's very dry. So I said, let's do it. Let's tick that box because I'm sure it won't come up, but just in case, so I can sleep well at night. And lo and behold, it came up, not for my students, but for one of the time zones. And formal report has come up a few times. Joe, I love it, obviously. So in about 3 minutes, guys, I'm going to try share my screen and just quickly whiz through the questions, some do's and don'ts, how I think you should approach each question. Reports sometimes have an overview, what the report is going to be about, why a report is taking place in the first place. Right, are we back? Okay. So are you streaming from Venus? Right, guys. I'm going to share my screen. If I can ask, obviously, if you have questions after sort of each section that I go through, then obviously ask those questions. But if we're sort of flooding the chat, I think that potentially doesn't help things. So let me try and share my screen. Okay, can everyone see? First of all, am I lagging? Can you see me? Can you see my screen? Okay, I might need to turn on slow mode just because I'm a little bit worried it's going to. Okay, let me. How do I? don't know if I can reactions. Right, let me see if I can. Right, I'm just going to put, sorry for the delay, I'm just going to put slow mode on just because if I can figure out how to do this. Oh, there it is, slow mode. There we go. Sorry, guys, just because it's a little bit laggy, partly because of my, partly because of me supposedly streaming from Venus. Right, guys, so what I'm going to do, again, apologies, I don't have a fancy pen, but I'm going to talk you through sort of paper one. Let's start with the basics. It's a 2-hour paper. I always say to my students, you really need to keep an eye on the clock. And there are some sort of suggested timings. And if you are going in with the mindset of, I'm just going to do the questions at whatever pace feels comfortable to me, chances are that you will sort of run out of time. I'm sure you can appreciate if you've done enough past papers already, there is a lot of content to get through. It'd be quite nice if you had 2.5 hours, but you don't, you have 2 hours. Okay. So there's a lot of content. So starting with when you open up your paper, invariably what most students like to do is turn straight to question 3. But you have to think, okay, if you turn to question 3 and it's a formal report, what is that going to do to you mentally? Are you someone who is au fait or confident with all the prescribed text types, or is that going to instill you with fear? So I would probably recommend, I know you'll be really curious, I would recommend starting with sort of question 3. And then when you start reading text, then you can look at question 3. Right, so when you open up your paper, you'll be greeted with the comprehension questions. So it's 1A to E. And these should be relatively quite straightforward. Always take note of the marks. Now, usually question 1A is 1 bullet point. This particular paper, which is from the May-June 2024 series, is asking you for 2 bullet points. Okay, what 2 features of the large wildcats, blah 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 blah. It's asking for 2 explicit ideas, and when there's a bullet point, that just means a short answer. You don't need to write in complete sentences, but for this particular question you need 2 bullets for 1 mark. Thanks, Cambridge. Then it potentially gets quite difficult quite quickly, depending on how good you are with your vocab. The great thing about FLE, guys, compared to your other subjects, you know what the questions are going to look like. So the next one is a sort of synonym question. Now, using your own words, explain what the text means by roamed freely. Now, where students often go wrong here is that they forget to explain both strands. Now, if you're not the best with synonyms, you can explain what each word means in a short sentence. That's absolutely fine. This whole paper is, I haven't read it, but it seems to be themed around sort of wildlife or animals. So roamed freely, wandered without restrictions, I'm sure that would be fine. And prospective framework, sort of potential outline of something, I'm sure that would be fine as well. And that would be sort of for 4 marks. Okay, so straight away there's 5 marks there. And then for question 1C, always take note of the command verb. It's give in this particular question. So again, it's 2 explicit ideas. Again, take note of the amount of marks that are available. I will come back onto the chat shortly. And then 1D, which features, again, it's an explicit question, 2 marks, you need 2 ideas. And then there's another strand, explain why some people might not be convinced. So when there's a 3 marker, I get my students to use firstly, secondly, lastly. Notice how there's no bullet points. So I guess the expectation is for you to write sentences, but you're not necessarily, you don't necessarily need to reword. I mean, you can reword, but it seems a bit of a waste of time to me. So you just identify the information from your insert, you highlight. Firstly, some people might not be convinced, blah, 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 because secondly, lastly, that should be quite straightforward. And E is the only question where you have to use your own words. So make sure you do use your own words where appropriate. Obviously, technical terms, geographical terms, jargon, etc. is absolutely fine. And again, this is worth 3 marks. So firstly, secondly, lastly, if you don't use your own words, you're not going to get the 3 marks, okay? So hopefully these questions should be relatively quite straightforward. Are there any questions about this first section? Quite easy, right? For this particular section, I mean, you want to do them as quickly as possible. I mean, realistically, if you can get these done within, and by this I mean sort of reading text A, understanding it, and getting these questions done within sort of 10 minutes, I think that's doable, and that's certainly something that you should aim for. In terms of the timings overall, and again, you need to take into account reading the text, annotating the text, planning your route. All of the small questions, so the 1 strands, the 2 strands, 30 minutes. The summary task, 20 minutes. The writer's effect, 30 minutes, so 15 minutes per paragraph. And the last question, question 3, which we will get onto, that Herculean task, the extended writing response, 40 minutes. Remember, guys, that's worth 25. I wish it was worth 40 marks. It's worth 25 marks. If you get your timings wrong, invariably, you will not leave yourself with enough time for question 3. This is paper 1. So let's move on to the summary. Summaries, one of those questions that I think students on the whole have this belief that it's quite a straightforward question, because at the end of the day, you are only writing 120 words. Which makes me sort of wonder every single year, who has handwriting so large that they need to go onto the second page? I have no idea. Anyway, the summary question, question 1F, is your first core question. By core question, I mean it's a biggie, okay? Even though you are only writing 120 lines, which realistically, by the way, if you've got sort of relatively normal size handwriting and you're writing from the top line, you're probably going to get to the bottom of the first page. If you are spilling way over to the second, you've either got incredibly huge handwriting or you are going significantly over the word count. Now, you know me with word counts. It's quite a contentious issue amongst English teachers. For the most part, they are suggested word counts. But for this particular question, I advise you to stick within that 120 sort of word limit. Yes, you can go slightly under. Yes, you can go slightly over. If it's going to stress you out being 2 or 3 or even 5 words over, please don't let it stress you out. And certainly don't be counting your words. Just make sure you fill the first slide, okay? You might want to do a rough count. But let's get on to sort of how to approach the question. So this particular, I'll just read it out anyway. According to text B, what are the arguments in favor of rewilding, and why might some people still not agree with it? So when you read the summary question, first of all, you want to look for that conjunction and. I have no idea if you can see me highlighting, but you need to look for that conjunction and that is telling us that we need to summarize two strands, two separate aspects, okay? And you want to sort of equal balance, okay? Where students often go wrong, and under pressure, I completely get it, is that they just focus on the first strand and they completely forget about the second one, or there's a bit of an imbalance. We want a balanced response. Now, some students, and this is absolutely fine, are happy to write one paragraph when two strands are being asked to summarize. For other students, it's easier to write two mini paragraphs. So 2 paragraphs for approximately 60 words. That is absolutely fine. You focus on the first strand, you focus on the second strand, okay? How do we approach this question? Okay, well, we read text B. Remember, text B is just for the summary question. It's a piece of nonfiction. It's relatively short. If you have still not downloaded my No Stress, Just Success study guide, it is on my community tab. There's a Google Drive. Please download it because I show you how to sort of annotate a text B. But you want to highlight roughly, if there's 2 strands, you want to highlight between 4 and 5 for each strand. 8 to 10 ideas is absolutely fine. There are 10 marks for content. That's not to say that you need to highlight 10 things. I think 8 plus is absolutely fine. So once you've highlighted and they link to the question, you need to think, okay, these are the things that I want to include in my summary. These are the main ideas. Then you need to sort of reword them or paraphrase them. This is another question where you are being asked to use your own words, okay? Another skill that a lot of students find quite difficult. A lot of students just lift from the text without rewording. It's really important to use your own words. What is the main idea? Okay, paraphrase that, put it into your own words. Once you've highlighted the ideas, you need to think, and this is also really important, if you adopt a sort of top to bottom approach, I'm going to start with the first idea, then the second, then the third, and the fourth, fifth, sixth, etc. Invariably, you will, well, you'll either repeat yourself or you will go significantly over the word count. So what you need to do, and this is probably the most important skill, I would say, you need to group similar ideas together. Okay, so say, for example, if it's a nonfiction text about the negative impact of social media, and there's something about sort of body image at the top, and there's something about body image at the bottom, we can group them together. As a general rule of thumb, each sentence that you write should have 2 to 3 ideas in it. Okay, so you need to think about how to group ideas together, and you need to use more complex sentences. If you use lots of simple sentences with just one idea from the text, it's not going to have a suitable style, and it's not going to be within that sort of word count. In terms of how you plan for that, what I would do is number your ideas. So let's say, for example, you've got an idea at the top. I want that to be my first sentence. I'm going to put number 1. Then you see something towards the bottom that could be in the same sentence. I'm going to put number 1. And there's something in the middle as well. That can be number 1. Okay, so 1, 1, 1. These 3 ideas are going to be in my first sentence. Okay, what is my next sentence going to be about? Okay, this is 2, 2. I've only got 2 ideas. Put them together. 3, 3, 3. That should be your planning process. Okay. In terms of the writing marks, there are 5 marks for the quality of your writing. Now, it's very, very difficult to get less than 3 for this question, unless your writing is just all over the place, okay? So it needs to be objective. It's a formal piece, okay? It needs to sound sort of academic. You need to use a range of discourse markers. So the discourse markers I try and get my students to use. So firstly, then you've got moreover, secondly, furthermore, and then lastly. Okay, remember, Do not give your own thoughts and opinions. Do not say, I think. We don't want any of that sort of subjectivity. 15 marks, okay, guys? Are there any questions about the summary question? I'll take a little break and just answer any questions. Can you highlight the questions? To my knowledge, no, but you can highlight the insert. But I heard from a subscriber recently that apparently their school doesn't allow highlighters, which is just crazy. Do you need 10 points? No, I would say 8 to 10 is absolutely fine. Do I have to put implicit ideas? No, it's all about identifying explicit ideas. But you can sort of include some implicit ideas as well. But if that's going to confuse you, there's more than enough explicit ideas to get you through that summary question. So please don't waste time with any of the questions counting the words that you have written. Again, as a general rule of thumb, you do not want to write any more than this if you've got relatively normal size handwriting. Some of you might not even fill this whole page. That's absolutely fine. If you fill this whole page, that's absolutely fine as well. You are not going to lose marks for going slightly over or slightly under. Okay. If you are going on to this second page, I would be a little bit concerned. Remember, a summary in essence is a condensed version of what you've just read, and the text B is relatively short anyway. So summary question, 20 minutes. Remember, guys, you're only writing 120 words. Lola, I would start with the topic sentence and I would include some sort of key words from the question. Yes, do annotate and do plan. In fact, guys, let me just show you, because some of you, I don't think, have downloaded my guide. Let me just see if I can. Right, just bear with me one moment and see. Let me see if I can get this guide up. Not that one. Okay, guys, if you haven't downloaded this, it's been available for maybe a week or 2 weeks. Please do download it because it takes you through every single question and the timings as well. But I just wanted to show you what I mean by sort of numbering your ideas from the summary question. Essentially, this is what your text B should look like. And this is my plan, right? So you'll see here, beekeeping is hard work and a considerable responsibility. I want that to be in my first sentence, but I also want, oh no, I've just used that sort of one idea, okay? And then we've got bees can be left for bees can't be left for long periods, and bees can be costly. I'm going to group them together. Hiring someone else to look after them can be costly. I'm going to include that. So I've got 3 ideas in my second sentence. My third sentence is going to have these 2 ideas. My fourth sentence is just going to have 1 idea. If there's just 1 idea, it kind of doesn't fit in with anything else. And then my fifth sentence, and then you end up with something that looks like this. Some of you may have looked at this already. Absolute yes, that's what I would do. If you want to download my No Stress Just Success walkthrough, you can go onto my post. There is a Google Drive link. Right, so let's go back to okay, so let's go back to FLE paper 1, looking at the question 2 strands. These are, again, it's very easy for me to say that they're straightforward. Some of them potentially could be quite time consuming, but I don't think they're necessarily too difficult. Again, if you're not the best with your sort of synonyms, they could potentially be somewhat challenging. So let's go through the question 2s. Again, apologies, guys. I cannot see the chat as I'm going through this, unfortunately. So, obviously, when you start looking at the question 2s, that's when you read text C. So text C is the narrative bolted on at the end, and it is used for all of the question 2s, including the writer's effect, and question 3 as well. So questions 2A to D. So question 2, you have to identify a word or phrase from the text which suggests the same idea as the words underline. Now, many students, believe me, I used to mark paper 1s. I used to spend my summer marking exam scripts. Lots of students unfortunately lose 4 marks here, believe it or not, because again, pressure and everything. What they do is they read the question, Hannah was planning to study the pond all alone and not have anyone else with her, and then they just write their own synonym. It happens every single year. These sentences you will not find in the story. They link to the story. They have been written specifically for this question. All you need to do is scan text C and find a word or a phrase which can replace the phrase which has been underlined. Okay. And as a little test, if you think you've got the idea, once you've highlighted it, just read it quietly to yourself or in your head. Hannah was planning to study the pond all alone, and insert new word or phrase. Does it make sense? Okay, brilliant. Usually, and I say usually, I think there was one past paper where the order was a little bit sort of mixed up. For the first synonym or phrase, you can find it quite close to the top, and they're in chronological order. So if you're struggling for, maybe the middle 2 and you've got the first one and the second one and the last one, it's somewhere in between. Okay, that's 4 marks. Students can often waste a lot of time on these 1 markers. I appreciate it's 4 marks, but if you are scanning the text again and again and again, you can't find a word or phrase, you come back to it. You should not be spending 5 minutes on this question. You try and get it done in a couple of minutes. Now, the next one, using your own words, explain what the writer means by each of the words underlined. Now, again, this is another question that students can get wrong because they just look at the words surface, unaware, trailing, and they just define them straight away. But as I'm sure you're aware, words change depending on the context in which they are used. So I really encourage you to reread the paragraph from text C and just try and understand in which context they are being used. And again, a suitable synonym or a short sentence is absolutely fine. Usually there's at least 1 word that is perhaps a little bit obscure, but use context clues, guys. Don't just leave it blank or come back to it. I would say 2 out of the 3 are usually quite straightforward. And then, take an educated guess. We shouldn't be leaving any questions blank. So, oh gosh, 2C. This question is done quite poorly, and it's not a difficult question. It's either not taught well, or sort of students don't read the instructions carefully, or they just don't know how to approach it. Use one example, guys. Use one. You are not analyzing that whole paragraph, okay? And if you do, you get 0 marks. Okay, Cambridge want to see that you've reread that short paragraph from text C, and you have identified one powerful image. Okay, I often refer to this as a sort of watered down writer's effect question, but you're not really doing any sort of significant or substantial language analysis. You're more making inferences. Read the instructions at the top, okay? Usually it's about thoughts and feelings. So use one example from the text below to explain how the writer suggests her feelings as she watched the pond. So in your 3 sentences, because that's all it really needs, I would expect to see 3 adjectives, 3 emotions, or 3 abstract nouns. I don't know. I haven't read it, but who's it about? John? No, it's John. I don't know who let's just say the speaker. The speaker is feeling a sense of awe as she admires the pond, and then link it to an image. Okay, what I would do, so you're not having to zoom in, I would choose I don't know, but there were tempting breaks in the floral mats, for example. I don't know if you can see me highlighting. I would just write the image on the top line. Okay, so write the image on the top line. Secretly, this kept my hope alight. So write the image on the top line. Firstly, this suggests that she is feeling because. Okay. Secondly, this suggests. Lastly, this suggests, and link it to your image. So there's a little bit of analysis, but you really don't need to be sort of zooming in or anything like that, as you would with the writer's effect question. 2C, 3 marks. Don't get it wrong. Are there any questions about the question 2s, the small question, the stranded questions? The mark scheme for 2C usually does cover them all because it's such a short paragraph. There's only so many images that you can pull out from that paragraph. I would choose an image rather than just a single word. For the literal meaning, I'll come on to that. That's more writer's effect. Okay, you are just focusing on the speaker's feelings. Depends what the prompt is at the top. Talent, how long should the example be? Again, I've not read this particular paper, but I mean, secretly, this kept my hope alight. It seems to be quite a striking image. Shows her optimism. Okay, guys, let's swiftly move on, and then I can sort of answer questions. So Oh, I've just figured out, by the way, better late than never, how to I can look at the chat and I can look at my screen as well. Okay, so question 2D is the second core question. So it's the righteous effect question. Do take note, not just with this question, but all of the questions, okay, where it says or where it asks you to reread a paragraph, because often students can lose marks because they refer to the wrong paragraphs, okay? So reread paragraphs 2 and 15. It even gives you the start of the line. Yeah, it just gives, I was going to say the end of the line. It gives you the beginning of the line just so you can cross-reference that and make sure that you are about to analyze the correct paragraph, okay? So paragraph 2 begins, then I saw, and is about Hannah's first impression of the lily pond. Paragraph 15 begins undercover and is about Hannah's thoughts and feelings as she studies the beavers. Now, the first thing you need to do when you reread, okay, is to take note of the information after the ellipses, so the ... okay? If it's a particularly challenging paragraph and there's lots of striking or unusual imagery, which it's your job to comment on, right? You know at least that the paragraph that you are going to be writing is going to focus on Hannah's first impressions of the lily pond. Is she sort of absolutely in awe over seeing it? And you know that the second paragraph that you are going to be writing about is her thoughts and feelings as she studies the beavers, okay? They're going to help you construct your topic sentences. So, explain how the writer uses language to convey meaning and to create effect in these paragraphs. Choose 3 examples of words or phrases from each paragraph to support your answer. Your choices should include imagery. With this one, and this is to everyone who perhaps does world literature or literature, this is not a literary response, okay? You want to keep it quite formulaic. If you're boring like me and you like to read examiner reports, maybe your teachers have shown you examiner reports which are written up every single year. Cambridge say that the best responses start with an awareness of what the writer is trying to achieve. However that topic sentence is expressed, that's absolutely up to you. If you've been watching my channel for long enough, you'll know that my topic sentence is the overall effect of the language creates an image of. Okay, Hannah's first impression. So the overall effect of the language creates an image of Hannah having feelings of awe towards the lily pond. Keep it nice and straightforward. Okay, so what you need to do for this, ultimately, you need to spend about 30 minutes. You need to construct 2 paragraphs and you have 3 striking images and each. You don't need to overcomplicate things. You don't need to look at structural devices. I've seen students looking at irony and foreshadowing and repetition, and don't do that. Okay, look at imagery, look at individual words, look at their explicit meaning, and look at their implicit meaning. Okay, we don't need all of this technical language that perhaps you would be expected to use in a sort of poetry or prose response. Okay, we want something that's quite formulaic. Okay, 50 marks are available for the content of your answer. So you're not given any sort of marks for your writing, but you still want the structure to be nice and clear. Let me show you the structure that I use. And I know Tortley uses quite a similar structure as well. Shout out to Tortley, by the way, she's amazing. Right, I know this is a different paper. Here are some top tips. So this is the structure, guys. Very different to a literary response. I know you've got your literature exams next week, I think. Well, my lot do. They do world literature. So start with the overall effect creates an image of, link it to the information after the ellipsis. So if it's about Lily, you need Lily's name in there. If it's about Sarah, John, whatever, and usually it will have some sort of abstract noun or adjective. The overall effect creates an image of John's desperation as he ventures through the dense forest. That is what the writer is trying to achieve, okay? If your analysis doesn't link to that, it becomes a redundant phrase. It's just pointless, okay? So keep that in mind. Then, firstly, the writer describes, include your quote. Now, again, if you do literature, you might be used to embedding your quotations so they slot beautifully into your sentences, but that is not a requirement, okay? So you can just put, firstly, the writer uses the image colon, quotation marks, and then 3 to 4 words, okay? You don't really need these lengthy quotations. The next step is the writer's use of the, you can put the word class or you can put word, okay? So you zoom in to one powerful word from your quotation to show the explicit meaning of that. So how is that powerful word being used within the context? Refers to, and you need to imagine looking that word up in the dictionary and giving a suitable definition within the context. Then this is the most important. So you get marks for your explicit meaning. Step 4 is the most important. Additionally, the writer's use of imagery. I just get my student, just repeat that. Okay, personification, you can say that. Similes, metaphors. It's not necessarily going to get you more marks. Okay, personification, onomatopoeia, personification, whatever, the list goes on. These are all under that imagery umbrella. So it's absolutely fine, however repetitive it sounds, to say the writer's use of imagery. Suggest. And here you want to say at least 2 things. And then for each quotation, you repeat steps 2 to 4. And I just realized I wasn't even sharing the right screen. Apologies. This is what I was referring to, guys. So if you're on your laptop, take a screenshot. This is the structure you want to learn. Again, this is from my No Stress, Just Success guide. For the last time, you can download it from my posts, or I think it's called a community tab. Okay, so this is the structure. Steps 1 to 4, and then you repeat those steps for each quotation, okay? You want to annotate some quick annotations, okay? For the core questions, you need to know your route, okay? Now, this is what a good writer's effect response looks like. You'll notice the discourse markers are in red. I would keep them. So firstly, additionally, secondly, furthermore, lastly. It's very repetitive. It's very formulaic. Okay. The overall effect of the language creates an image of a calm, natural scene, focusing on the quiet activity and anticipation in the beehive. So it's a very short sentence, but that is what the writer is trying to achieve in the paragraph, if you have done this paper. And then if you have a look at this quotation, again, I'm not quite sure if you can see me highlighting. This is what I mean by embedding the quotation. It slots into my sentence beautifully. You don't have to do that. Excuse me. You can just put, firstly, the writer uses the image, insert quotation. And in the green here, the writer's use of the verb, casting, refers to the patterns of the leaves creating a moving spotted shadow on the ground. That's what it means within the context. Okay, so we get marks there. Additionally, the writer's use of imagery suggests a sense of quiet movement and natural harmony. This is where I really get the marks from, guys. Then, secondly, the writer describes a worker bee venturing uncertainly out of the hive. That's my second quotation. the writer's use of the adverb. Then I describe what uncertainly means. Then furthermore, the writer's use of imagery suggests. Then I analyze the image. Then my last quote, the writer describes that a solitary worker would be accompanied, blah, 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 blah. Then I look at the adjective solitary and explain what that means within the context. Then I go on to my implicit exploration or my analysis. And that, again, I would go through this guide with a fine-tooth comb. I spent a long, long time putting it together for you guys. That is what your writer's effect paragraph should look like. Any questions about that? No, I would repeat. I get it, guys. Particularly if you are watching this and you are a literature student, you might think, gosh, that is really repetitive. This is what Cambridge want. They want something really formulaic. Bam, bam, bam. This is the overall effect. This is my first image. This is a powerful word. This is what it means within the context. This is my analysis. Tick that box. Go on to my second image. Shh, like a shopping list. Is it okay to use devices? Absolutely. If you know something is personification, that's fine. Invariably, the striking quotations that you guys will choose will be examples of imagery. Imagery is such a huge umbrella term, guys. Yes, two separate paragraphs, starting with the overall effect of the language creates an image of. And what you'll notice, guys, sorry, this is quite important. So obviously you are directed to two different sections of text C. More often than not, there will be some sort of significant contrast. So there might be a paragraph which is really calm and ethereal and otherworldly and really inviting, and you want to be in this place. And then maybe the weather's taken a turn for the worse, and it's really malevolent and scary and unsettling and unwelcoming, okay? So your overall effect of the language creates an image of will be very, very different. No conclusions. Do we need to specify which imagery? I mean, you can do. Will you get extra marks? Not really. The most important thing is the quality of your analysis. You can still get 15 out of 15, guys, just by zooming in and saying this word suggests. Okay, what Cambridge cares about is not someone who can use all of this technical language necessarily. Someone who can identify 3 striking images from each paragraph and comment on the effect, show an appreciation of how language works, not someone who's going to use all of this sort of technical language and then support that technical language with weak analysis. And for this one, guys, 30 minutes. If that means going over the word count, and if you are good at analyzing language, you go over the word count. You explore those different shades of meaning. Yes, there is a suggested word count. I think it's 250 to 350. It's about the quality of your analysis. Lots of my literature students, my world lit students, they go significantly over, but their analysis it's spot on. Can you get 15 out of 15 sticking within the word count? Absolutely. But if you hit that sort of suggested word count within like 10 minutes, why not just keep writing and writing and writing? Who knows? One of those images that you've selected, okay, the analysis might not be so strong. So just keep going, write for 30 minutes. If you need extra paper, you get that extra paper. This No. Right. Sorry, guys. Little sort of story time. So when I worked in the UK, I used to be an examiner for English language and literature. And some students obviously, disregarded word counts entirely, and they wrote pages and pages and pages. And do you know what I had to do? I had to read every single word. You are not penalized for going over the word count. However, that does not necessarily mean writing more equates to better. It's about the sort of quality, right? I tell you what question I perhaps would encourage you to go over the word count, and that is question 3. Question 3, which I will come on to, and the directive writing question to evaluate ideas successfully, you need to go over the word count, but that's paper 2 stuff. Right, guys, let's finish this off with me looking at. Okay, guys, so let's look at question 3. Out of interest, who feels confident with question 3? Just give me a me in the chat. Who feels confident? We're gonna know. I've actually got some of my students, some of my lovely year 11s watching this as well. No, nothing about foreshadowing or anything like that, guys. Keep it nice and simple. If you're referring to the writer's effect question, I would avoid that. Just focus on imagery and powerful words. Okay, let's talk about question 3. This is the Herculean task, commonly referred to as the extended writing response. Extended writing, you have to write a lot. I say a lot is 250 to 350 words. I don't know. I teach a student who they're very, very quick at writing, right? And they write pages and pages for this, but it's fine. Write between 250 to 350 words. Okay. I would say that question 3 is a question that really sort of differentiates those who get those sort of top grades, and we're talking A's and A stars, and those who kind of get your B's and your C's, because it is a difficult question. And what you need to understand is that it is both even though this is a reading paper, okay, it is both a reading and writing paper. So you are being assessed in both areas. And there are 8, if you separate the letters, informal and formal letters, there are 8 prescribed text types. And really, tomorrow, you want to be confident with all of those text types. So you don't want to open up your paper and be thinking, gosh, if this text type comes up, ground open up and swallow me whole. You don't want to be feeling like that. The text types that you need to know. Let me see if I can remember them. So you've got formal letter, informal letter, magazine article, speech, journal, interview, formal report, and newspaper report. I would say the text types that students find inherently difficult are formal reports and newspaper reports. It's just they are boring. At the core of this question, right, you have to assume the role of a character. But if you are required to write a newspaper report, okay, you're a journalist, but if you're writing a formal report, what character? It's a very formal piece of writing. There's no life, there's no character, there's nothing in a formal report. Right, let's talk about question 3. And this is an interview task. So you are John. Notice how it says you are John. If you look at all the past papers, guys, it said, imagine you are John. Cambridge do not want you to imagine. They want you to become John. So when you sit down and you open that paper and it says, you are Sarah, you are John, you are Louise, okay, you need to put yourselves in the shoes of that character. How are they feeling? What are their speech patterns? Okay. What type of sentences do they use? What type of vocabulary do they use? Okay. This question is all about creating an authentic and believable voice. If you write as yourself, if you write as a 16-year-old student, you are going to do badly. As simple as that. As simple as that. So you are interviewed by a journalist, blah, 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 blah. This is an interview task, okay? Now, interviews. Interviews can be easy. Interviews can be difficult, okay? Why are they easy? Well, they're easy because you are just required to write 3 responses. Now, if anyone's watching, I'm getting my pen out, because I mean serious business, and I've just dropped my pen. If anyone's watching and they're teachers, do not make up questions. Write your answers to the journalist questions. It's nice because all you need to do is write 3 paragraphs. First person responses, guys. You don't even need to put interviewer, interviewee, interview. Don't do that. Right. Okay, I'm back. It's lagging a little bit for me as well. So don't make up questions for the interview. You don't need an introduction. You don't need a conclusion. You might put, thanks for having me. It's great to be here. That's absolutely fine. It needs to sound believable. Imagine you being interviewed by a journalist while simultaneously imagining that you are John. Okay. So interviews straightforward in the sense that you are writing 3 paragraphs only, but difficult in the sense that you really need to embody that character. Right. Okay, I'm back. You're the only one. Okay. Sorry, I get carried away. So let me share my screen again. I think it was it this one? Was it this one? Yes. So going back to sort of question 3, yes, interview can be straightforward, 3 paragraphs, first person, it needs to be believable. You need to create an authentic voice, okay? No introduction, no closing, nothing like that. What students find difficult is that there is actually a lot that goes into this. Let's talk about the 15 marks available for the content of your answer. So there are 3 bullet points, and you want to end up hopefully with 3 equal sized paragraphs. Sometimes students can run out of time, and then bullet point 3 is either neglected entirely or there's a few poxy sentences. You want 3 equal sized paragraphs, right? And usually that's 1.5 to 2 pages. Some might go on to additional paper, etc. So 50 marks are available for the content of your answer. You need a sort of range of explicit ideas, and you need to highlight these from text C. So what did you, if we look at bullet point 1, again, I've not read this text, but what did you already know about the behavior of beavers before the project began? We will find that information in the text. For bullet point 1, it's quite easy usually to find at least 5 explicit ideas. I recommend that you have 3 highlighters. Okay, you do a little sort of code at the top, so it's easy to navigate when you're rewording and sort of crafting your response together. So just from that opening word, what, we know that's going to be sort of explicit. I think 5 ideas is absolutely fine. Okay, we've got our 5 ideas for bullet point 1. For bullet point 2, what were the challenges Hannah faced? Again, 5 ideas is fine. If you can't get 5 ideas, that's fine. You're not going to lose marks. I would say, providing you are developing these ideas, 3 to 5 ideas is absolutely fine. Bullet point 3, again, is really what sort of differentiates those sort of top grades from those sort of mid grades. What do you admire about Hannah's attitude to her work? You'll probably find some evidence to help you with that. And what do you hope to achieve through this project? Once you've highlighted the explicit ideas, you need to think about how you are going to develop. I'm going to put this in the chat so you don't forget. Take note. If you don't develop, if you just highlight your explicit ideas and reword them, okay, you are not going to do very well for this question. Okay, what gets you or what helps you climb that mark scheme is your development or your inference. So everything after and, that is Cambridge helping you, throwing you a bone, telling you what you need to develop. What surprised you about what Hannah was observed and what Hannah has observed and discovered so far? This might not be clearly stated in the text. You have to read between the lines. You have to infer. Okay, how did you help her solve them? You have to infer. It can be anything that's sensible, providing it stems from the text. What do you both hope to achieve through this project? Okay, usually bullet point 3 is something about future plans, something that is not explicitly stated. Okay, you need to infer, you need to make inferences. So once you've highlighted your ideas, you've looked at how you're going to develop them, then it's time to do a little plan. Okay, what is your first bullet point 1 going to be about? What you're going to write about? I would actually do a little plan at the top and then just put a line through it. Okay, once you've understood John's character, this is an interview, so again, you might start with something quite generic. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here, and it's great to be talking about something that I am so passionate about. And then use the first question, okay, as a starter. Okay, what did you know about the behavior of beavers? Your first question is really interesting, actually, because I knew nothing about beavers, which is why it took me so, something like that. So use the bullet points if it's an interview to help you sort of formulate some sort of topic sentence, and that hopefully will act as a nice springboard into the rest of your response. So that kind of is it's similar to the summary in many ways. You are rewording, you are highlighting explicit ideas, you are rewording them, but the difference is that you are developing them using that information after conjunction and. How do we get 10 marks for writing? It depends on the text type. Okay, I use the acronym A Right Forest. Okay, I'm sure you've got lots of persuasive techniques in your writer's toolbox, but A Right Forest is a useful acronym, easy to remember. So alliteration, repetition, imperative, personal pronouns, emotive language, facts, opinions, rhetorical question, repetition, can't remember which one I've said, exaggeration, statistics, and triplets. You want to use a range of devices to create an authentic voice, okay? This is speech. Use humor, use hyperbole, use rhetorical questions, use anecdotes. Bring your writing to life. If you are being asked to assume a character and it's a particularly informal text type, okay? Text types where you really need to think about your voice and injecting a bit of life into your voice. Obviously, it depends on the sort of topic manner, but journals, for example, the audience is you. It's self-reflective. Okay, so you should be able to be quite experimental and creative with your language and stylistic choices. Journal, informal letter, interview. Okay, all of these text types, you can be a bit more sort of creative. Also, sorry, I forgot to mention, probably the first thing that I should have mentioned, work out the TAP. So another acronym that I use: text type, audience, and purpose. What text type are you being asked to write? Okay, so this is an interview. Think about the generic features of interview responses. Well, they're going to use features of authentic speech. You might have, you see, well, let me think about that, you know, to create this authentic voice. You might have rhetorical questions, etc. If it's a journal, what are those generic writing features? Formal letter, for example, you'll have a suitable opening, dear sir, madam, or their surname, yours sincerely, yours faithfully. Each text type has its own generic features depending on the audience and purpose. So I would write TAP. What's the text type? Who is the audience? And what is the purpose? Is the purpose to persuade? Is it to inform, describe, to argue, etc.? Absolutely, 9 points, I think, is providing you develop. And you don't need to develop every single word, every single idea, guys. So you don't necessarily, let's take bullet point 1. Here's my explicit idea I'm going to develop. Here's my second I need to develop. Okay, as long as there is some development. If it's letter for a friend, good question, actually. They used to give you sentence starter, and the opening for an informal letter was always dear friend, which, you know, who write one? No one writes letters these days, but who would write a letter, dear friend? Yes, you can make up a name if the name is not given, but that's probably the only thing that you need to make up. Don't create addresses. So that is a whistle-stop tour of paper 1. I'm going to end sharing my screen at least and just stay on for a little bit longer. I appreciate it's almost 8:30. Some of you probably want to do a bit of revision, maybe away from the screen. I'm just going to answer, I'll be on for about another 10 minutes and just sort of answer any questions about paper 1. So stop sharing. Unfortunately, I don't think Ginger Mathematician is here anymore. You might be able to predict certain topics that come up in maths and other subjects. There's no rhyme and reason with English. Obviously, there are 3 time zones. Sometimes 2 time zones get a letter. I don't think there's ever been like 3 of the same sort of text type for question 3. But just because a text type hasn't come up in a while doesn't mean it's going to come up. Okay. If that's the case, maybe newspaper reports going to come up, because that hasn't come up since 2019. I don't think it will come up, but we'll see. I feel like it might be a magazine article. Well, there's 3, guys. Let's remember there's 3 different exams taking place, right? I think one of them will be a magazine article. How do we structure a report? Fatima, I would, for recommendations, I would do bullet points. But a report, essentially, the reason why it's quite boring, it is quite boring. You're writing sort of your observations of problems that you've witnessed and coming up with recommendations to to improve a service. So you might have a little introduction about what the report is going to outline, what were the problems that were observed, and what are the recommendations. And if it's a formal report, Tech C will lend itself well to that task, because only certain Tech Cs are appropriate for formal report, because it's such a specific text type, if that makes sense. Do the content points have to be very accurate to the mark scheme? No, which is a great thing, actually. What's the order for summary? You have stated not to go from top. You might start at the top for summary, but it's about grouping ideas together. So you might start at the top, and then you might have an idea at the bottom, and you might group these ideas. So summary, it depends on what you're summarizing. How do you develop points in extended writing? You look at the information after the conjunction and you read what it says and what it's asking you to base your inferences on. How many points would suffice for summary writing? 8 to 10 is fine. I just wanted to say that my teacher's a big fan. Said he'd meet me in this chat. Any wise words I can tell him from you? A big hi, and that I'm very tired. And if I had it my way, I'd be in bed already. But here I am. Vocabulary. So yes, it's important, particularly for question 3, but it depends on the text type. Okay, you just need to make sure that you are using, let's say, for example, it's a journal. Okay, and you're trying to impress Cambridge with all of these sort of fancy words, but it's not in keeping with the character. It's more accurate for me to say use precise vocabulary choices that are in keeping with the story or the context. Thanks, JJ. Appreciate it. Teaching can be quite a thankless and draining job sometimes, but I love it. Magazine articles. So magazine articles often come up depending on the audience. Everything tap, tap, tap. It all depends on the tap, right? Okay, the audience and purpose. So magazine article often comes up. If it's for a younger demographic, it's great. If any of the text types are for a younger audience, that is great, because you can be a bit more playful with your language. You can use humor, throw in the odd dad joke, do it. I used to say to my year 11s, okay, this is just like me being funny. And I'd read it out in front of the class, and it'd just be like, you could hear a pin drop. I appreciate my humor is probably different to what you guys find funny, but use humor if it's appropriate. So for question 3, you said 3 to 5 ideas are enough. So after writing the explicit idea, easy not guy. No, as the mark scheme says, as long as there is some development. If you develop every single idea, you'd be writing a lot. Do we lose marks if we begin our writer's effect with in paragraph number, since it's considered? You don't need to name the paragraphs, number the paragraphs. It just seems like a waste of time to me. What if they don't? Good. This is a good question. If I could highlight that, I don't think I can highlight it, but someone's just asked, what happens if they don't give you the conjunction and? For question 3, you pray to God. This is actually sometimes, a lot of the newer papers, you get and for each bullet point, right? Which is brilliant. Thank you, Cambridge. Throw me a bone. My world is not going to stop spinning, because that's Cambridge whoever created the paper is telling me what I need to base my inferences on. But what do we do if there is no conjunction? You read question 3, you read the 3 bullet points, there's no conjunction. What happens if none of the bullet points have that conjunction and is missing? What do you do? Do you develop? Of course you do. So if that conjunction and is missing, guys, any suitable development is absolutely fine. Thoughts and feelings of a character is usually an easy win. So even if and is missing from the bullet points, I'm talking about question 3 here, still develop, still infer. Should we use idioms? Also, yes, idioms, phrasal verbs. We haven't caught up in a long time. When are you free to catch up? If it's appropriate, if you're writing an informal letter to a friend, I would use humor. I would use hyperbole, idioms, phrasal verbs. Obviously, you're not going to write "it's raining cats and dogs" because, quite frankly, who uses that idioms? I don't know. Suitable idioms. For writer's effect, does it have to be the exact effect in the mark scheme? No, it doesn't. Jake, if there's no conjunction, if you're talking about question 3 and there's no conjunction and, an easy way to make developments is just to expand or explore what the character is feeling based on the first part of the bullet point. But usually the bullet points, at least 2 of them will have and. She's joined. I won't name her, but there's a student I've taught since year 8, year 7, and she's now in year 11, taking the most important GCSE tomorrow. So what separates an A from an A star? Believe it or not, guys, to get an A, and I'm talking about paper 1, paper 2, I wouldn't say it's too difficult in terms of sort of the points that you need to get. But to get an A star is actually quite difficult. Only a sprinkling of my students last year got A stars. There were quite a few who got A's, but a sprinkling, if that, got the top grades. It's those students who really understand the nuts and bolts of the core questions, really understand how to write an effective summary, really understand how to analyze language, really know how to assume the role of a character. What is the hardest text type? For me or for students? The text type I think students struggle with the most, probably because they don't get that much practice at sort of doing it, because there's not many past papers, is a newspaper report and formal report. Do we need to use unique vocab? Precise vocabulary choices definitely help with your writing marks for question 3. Right, guys, I think it's time. Over here, it's 8:30, and I know a lot of my students are watching this, and I want them to leave and study. And I want you guys to leave and independently study. Thank you so much for watching. I'm ready to eat, have an early night, and I just wanted to end this stream with I have everything, every fiber of my being crossed for all of you. I am rooting for you. Keep an eye on the clock. If you get the timings wrong, it's game over. Okay. Lastly, if you want some, some last minute prep, download my No Stress Just Success guide. Try and do one more paper or even one question, depending on what your weakness is. Go onto my community tab. You can download it there. It's free. Good luck. I'm rooting for you. And with all that said and done, I am signing off and going to bed. Good luck, guys.